Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. What is the most creepy, unexplained event that has happened in your life? My uncle used to have a cabin in the woods near Winter, Wisconsin on a relatively undeveloped arm of the Chippewa flowage. Not too remote that you couldn't pop into town for necessities, but far enough in the boonies that if you got hurt you'd be in serious trouble. I used to spend time there in the summer tearing through the woods with my two cousins. One morning when I was about 10, my uncle woke us up roughly and told us it was time to go fishing. It was still super early and we were all confused because it was pitch dark and who the hell went fishing so early anyway? He hustled us down to the dock where he kept his little fishing boat and quickly launched us into the water and away from the house. At this point we were all getting a little freaked out by the weirdness of the situation. We thought maybe we were being punished because my uncle had gone to chop wood the previous morning and couldn't find his axe anywhere. He'd left it lodged in a stump next to the cabin and accused us of messing with it, which, to be fair, sounded like something we probably would have done. He ended up having to drive into town to buy a new one. He wasn't talking, though. We just sat shivering under a blanket at the bow of the boat while my uncle stared wide-eyed at the shoreline and waved a flashlight furtively ahead of us. We eventually arrived at my uncle's friend's cabin across the lake and tumbled into his house. Our uncle sent us to the loft to sleep and he and his buddy locked the doors and left, not returning until well after sunrise. Eventually our uncle showed up with the truck and trailer already packed with all of our gear and told us it was time to go home. We all thought it was weird that we were leaving the cabin days early, but we were kids so we just went with it. My uncle was quiet for the whole long drive back to civilization. Many years later my uncle confided to me that the reason he'd hustled us home was because he'd woken up around 3 a.m. to a strange thok sound from outside the cabin. He'd gone out to investigate when a massive jack pine fell directly across the narrow driveway, blocking us in. Startled by the noise, he swept his flashlight along the tree line just in time to see a man holding an axe slink away into the dark of the wood. He and his buddy had to take turns chainsawing the tree apart while the other stood watch with a rifle. He never found the axe. I saw a guy accidentally drop 16-inch concrete drill bit from shoulder height. It never hit the ground. It's like it stopped existing on its way to the floor. No sound of it hitting the floor, nowhere to go, just gone. 3 witnesses all saw the same thing. This happened in a completely empty newly constructed building. Hallway was tiled, walls were cinder block, newly installed drop ceiling. We had to fill out a missing tool report, got written up for it, had to search the entire building top to bottom for hours. I'm a very skeptic person. I can't come up with any reasonable explanation for it. Still think about it when questions like this come up. Sometimes things can just disappear, I guess. Me, my boss and a co-worker were standing at a surface table measuring something when the quarter-ton table moved about 6 inches at one corner across the concrete floor with a loud screech like someone had grabbed it and moved it out of the way. We just looked at each other like, did that just happen? This didn't happen to me, but to a friend. He had a doctor's appointment, and took his dad with him. It was in another town about an hour away, and since the appointment was for 11 a.m., they left at 9:30 to give themselves plenty of time. They pulled into the parking lot at 10:30. My friend said he remembered checking the clock in the car when they arrived, and remarking to his dad that they made good time. They went into the office, and the receptionist pointed out that they were a little late, but that it was okay because the doctor was running behind. My friend told her that he had an 11 o'clock appointment, and that he was actually a half hour early, and she pointed to the clock on the waiting room wall, which said 11:15. His dad checked his watch. 11:15. My friend ran out and checked the clock in the car. 11:15. Somehow, in the few dozen steps from the car to the office, they'd lost 45 minutes. When they got home, my friend's mom verified that they'd left home at 9:30, and there hadn't been heavy traffic or delays of any kind. It's a mystery to this day. A buddy picked me up to go to a couple bars, have a few drinks and whatnot. Everything was fine, I had a nice little drunk going on. Around 11 p.m., I went outside to smoke a stogie, then, boom, I woke up at my house in my bed. The following morning, I don't recall even leaving the bar, let alone how I returned home. I had multiple missed calls from my buddy, called him up to see what happened, and he said I just disappeared. The creepy part is, after got off the phone with him, I went to the restroom, to realize, some way, somehow, during the time I went MIA I had received a haircut and someone shaved my face. Weird. I do my business, only to realize my wiggly bits had been groomed as well, with expertise precision, I must add, not a missed hair, nick or cut. Still to this day don't know what happened, but upon sharing this story with other friends, I was spotted at other bars throughout the night, pre-haircut, and alone. I work for a funeral company. One afternoon I did a viewing for a man who was having his funeral the next day. Usually at the end of the day we put the bodies back in the fridge, but because we'd been really busy, and I was at a small branch, we only had a very small fridge and it was already full, so on the rare occasion, if they've been embalmed, we'll leave them in the chapel with the air conditioner cranked up because we have good security systems, and who wants to break into a funeral home anyway? So the next morning I'm the first one in and I walk into the chapel and the man is out of his coffin laying face down on the floor. Not sprawled, but perfectly neat, like he'd floated up out of his coffin, turned face down, and floated down to the ground. Obviously I had a heart attack and my first thought was someone had broken in and done this, or staff members playing a prank. A very sackable prank, and I can't imagine any of our staff doing that for any reason. And what's more, we have security cameras and motion detectors and swipe cards so you can see who has come and gone, but there was nothing. According to the security, no one came in or left that night. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we don't have security cameras in the chapel, and if you're thinking the guy wasn't really dead, I'm not in a third world country. He was dead, he had been embalmed. You don't tend to survive an embalming. So yeah, it was a massive investigation and no one could explain how he ended up like that. It still gives me the creeps every time I go in there. My dad and stepmother got married when I was 10 years old at a countryside estate which is now a wedding venue. The other kids and I were playing hide and seek in this massive house, every kid's dream, when my sister, 12 at the time, was chasing my younger cousin, 7 at the time, who had long blonde hair, wearing a blue dress down a long hallway. Halfway down the hallway the younger cousin dips into this old spiral staircase that only goes up a quarter rotation before it's blocked off with a wall. My sister jumps round the corner and shouts "Gotcha!" Except nobody was in this blocked staircase. She runs back to my dad crying, saying that our cousin disappeared through a wall, and everyone laughed it off because said cousin was right next to her. Fast forward 5 years, I'm 15 and I get a job as a waiter at the same wedding venue. The estate has an orangery, which is where they hold the ceremonies, and I notice a small stained glass window depicting a blonde-haired girl wearing a blue dress with the dates 1931 to 1937 underneath her. Naturally I'm dumbfounded, so I ask about the stained glass window. The venue manager tells me that after being sold by the original owner, the estate was a boarding school for girls. She tells me that a young girl fell out of a top floor window and sadly passed away. The hallway that my sister chased my cousin down was an old servants' hallway, and the staircase was the central staircase that leads directly up to the old girls' dormitories on the top floor. Spooky. Learned a lot about the house during my 5 years working there. Nothing else spooky, but plenty that is very, very interesting. My family was sitting on the back porch watching a thunderstorm. My older brother grabbed a toy gun out of my hand and said, "Watch this." He pointed the gun at a tree in the backyard and pulled the trigger. As the toy gun popped, lightning struck the tree he was aiming at and the tree fell over. He handed me the toy gun back with a smile and walked away. My parents witnessed this event as well. It was one hell of a coincidence, but damn was his smile creepy. Like he knew it was going to happen. One time when I was younger, I was upstairs in my room playing some games on a PlayStation. I was home alone because both of my parents had gone out to see a movie. It was a fairly normal night with nothing out of the ordinary happening until I heard an extremely loud crashing noise and what sounded like glass shattering coming from the kitchen area. I immediately went downstairs to try and see the source of the noise. I checked all of the windows, and they showed no signs of damage. Confused, I kept walking around trying to find the source of this loud crashing noise until I walked over to the kitchen. I don't know how this happened, but apparently the outer glass screen of her oven just completely fell off and shattered. Slightly terrified, I proceeded to sweep up all of the glass and throw it away. I tried explaining the situation to my parents when they got home, but they didn't believe my story and grounded me for a week because they thought I broke it. To this day I still have no clue what caused the oven screen door to shatter like that, and it's one of the biggest unexplained mysteries in my life. Event 1: I walked into the grocery store late at night and a woman walked past me with a cart full of one type of cereal. It's the kind of cereal that has a few elements, so doesn't work as an ingredient, so I just don't think it was somebody buying it for baking. Just weird. Event 2: I walked into a study room at university and somebody was sitting in there eating that same cereal out of the box. They turned as I walked in the room and said, "Hey, my name." I had never met this person. They weren't in any of my classes. But I was on the university student council, so I figured they just recognized me. Event 3: a month later, I was driving to my doctor. Totally different neighborhood to Event 1. I saw a woman crossing the road with some bags of groceries and she got hit by a car. Traffic immediately stopped and I got stuck there for a while. As I finally crawled through the traffic past her, someone was holding up the same cereal that had been knocked out of her bag. They seemed to look straight at me in my car and held up the box, and pointed to it, making eye contact with me. Event 4: I was walking to my internship early one morning, in the city. It was about an hour before peak hour and the streets were empty. I rounded a corner and saw a Nepalese family. As soon as I rounded the corner, like they'd been waiting for me, one of the kids pointed at me and loudly shouted, "There she is! There!" The whole family became visibly excited and pointed and stared at me as I walked by. I am not a celebrity. I'm not on YouTube or social media with any significant presence. The dad was holding that F-king cereal comforter being slowly tugged off of me from the foot of the bed. When I was about 15, I was home alone in my house at night. It was just me and my 3 dogs. My dogs were normally very lazy at night. All they would do is lay in their dog beds chilling out until bedtime. But for some reason on this night they all became very agitated at the same time. They all kept running into different rooms in my house and growled and barked at empty corners, something that they had never done before or since. I checked the whole house and never found anything. I don't believe in anything supernatural, but that night I slept in my parents' bedroom with the door locked, a gun next to me, and all 3 dogs on the bed with me. Don't remember if I had posted this before, but it was when my hubby was sick and I had to travel to another city to take care of him. He traveled to another city for work which wasn't that far from where we lived, and he was staying at his uncle's condo. My hubby is one who tries to power through everything, so when he called me and said he needed me, I went. I arrived at the condo and found him in the living room asleep. So I go to gently wake him up and let him know I arrived. He get up rather quickly and with his eyes closed he begins to talk. He says they don't like him and they've been hurting him. I asked him who is they, and he said the ones that stay there. I don't know why or how he's talking to me because he's not awake and it's starting to freak me out. So I asked who is they, and he said the ghosts. I said there's no such thing as ghosts, but then he gets excited and says they're here. Before I can ask another question he says the lights will go off, letting us know they aren't happy with me there. Sure enough, the lights in the living room turned off and everywhere downstairs. I'm thinking WTF is going on? My hubby then goes back down and starts sleeping. I stayed the night with him and he talked on and off again without opening his eyes, saying that they pushed him down the stairs and made his clothes fly out the closet. I tried to sleep but kept having weird dreams of an Asian family looking at me from the stairs. Finally morning comes, my hubby wakes up and asks what I'm doing there. I said you called me and asked me to come because you didn't feel good. He said he didn't remember calling me or the conversations he was having. A weird F-king night. I asked that he not stay there anymore and he didn't. One night last year I was taking a shower before bed. The glass in the shower door shattered, leaving shards everywhere and me with some cuts and no way to get out of the shower without cutting the soles of my feet badly. Luckily my wife heard and helped me out. The shattering glass is explainable. The door was hanging off the track for months. There must have been pressure on the glass and eventually it got too much. My own fault. In the hour and a half spent cleaning up the glass I realized there was some weird foreshadowing of this event. Earlier that evening I was putting my son to bed. He was 5 at the time and out of nowhere he asked me, "Daddy, what are shards?" Earlier that week I was discussing music with some friends. We were talking about the Eurythmics. With that in mind I was watching some of their music videos that night, about 20 minutes before the glass in the shower door shattered. Before my wife had to bring me my slippers so I could walk over the shards of glass without slicing up my feet, I was watching the video for Annie Lennox's Walking on Broken Glass. When I was 13 I had a weird flash of a nightmare while asleep. All I remembered was kneeling on asphalt and holding my hand to my mouth, in the worst pain of my life. I told my mom about the dream because it scared me so much. 2 years later, I was hit by a car while crossing the street and ended up in that exact position, kneeling on asphalt, holding my mouth while blood poured out. My head had apparently bounced off the rearview mirror and that had knocked my 2 front teeth back into my soft palate. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.